Look closely at the Las Vegas Strip. It's an environment engineered down to the square inch to maximize consumption, a place where billion-dollar revenues flow through a highly controlled, flawlessly curated aesthetic. To maintain that pristine image, the city recently enacted what it calls an encampment ordinance. It's a legal mechanism designed to sweep the most visible signs of poverty off the streets. The law effectively builds an invisible wall around high-value commercial zones. You can no longer on the sidewalks adjacent to residential properties or anywhere near tourist hubs like the Resort and Casino Corridor, the Fremont East area, or the Las Vegas Arts District. If a person is caught resting in these designated public rights-of-way while shelter space exists elsewhere, they are charged with a misdemeanor. That carries a penalty of up to 6 months in jail, a $1,000 fine, or both. And the perimeter keeps expanding. Clark County passed its own version of the ban, pushing the restrictions beyond the pavement into local parks, trails, and public underpasses. Threatening a person with jail time fails to produce housing. Aggressive vagrancy laws act as a displacement filter, shifting the unhoused population out of public view to protect commercial interests. So where do they go? When the surface level becomes legally hostile, thousands of displaced residents are swallowed up by the concrete beneath the streets. They descend to a massive 1,600 square miles subterranean network of concrete flood control channels that weave directly under the Las Vegas Smiley. Inside these dark tunnels, you'll find a complete hidden society. People set up beds, stockpile survival supplies, and form communities in the absolute pitch black. Clearing the sidewalks through legislation has funneled thousands into these infrastructural tunnels, effectively burying a growing social crisis beneath the casino floors. Those tunnels were never built to hold people. The Clark County Regional Flood Control District designed this exact infrastructure to catch and redirect the massive volume of water that hits the desert during severe storms. When a 100-year flash flood event strikes, millions of gallons funnel into these narrow spaces. The channels can fill up in minutes, sending a deadly wall of turbulent water racing through the darkness at highway speeds. Using a storm drain as your permanent address means living in a highly unpredictable, lethal environment, where a single rainstorm miles away can wash away everything you own and everyone you know. Groups like the Shine a Light Foundation actually have to gear up and plunge into these dangerous flood-prone depths to build trust, deliver critical supplies, and help people find long-term stability. No one chooses to sleep in a flood channel if they have better options. The terrifying physical risk of the tunnels is a direct reflection of the brutal economic math that drove them underground in the first place. To understand that math, we have to look at the exact financial sequence that causes a family to lose their home. Researchers tracked this progression using a statistical method called latent class analysis. This chart shows the item response probabilities mapping housing insecurity among at-risk mothers. It divides their financial coping strategies into 4 distinct mathematical subgroups based on the bills they prioritize. The first 2 groups, labeled stable and rent-focused, manage early financial strain by protecting their housing above all else. They might skip meals or borrow money, but they ensure the landlord gets paid. Then we see the strategic bill-paying class. These families intentionally withhold utility payments to free up cash. They accept electricity shutoffs and take on debt to artificially delay an eviction notice. But all these strategies eventually hit a wall. The data isolates one critical tipping point: the moment a household simply doesn't have the cash to make the monthly rent. Missing that single payment drops them directly into the unstable class. From here, the math cascades rapidly. The probability of formal eviction spikes, and the risk of experiencing literal homelessness increases 6-fold. This data proves that living in a flood channel is the predictable endpoint of a financial breakdown, the final stage for families who lose a mathematical game of survival. Back on the surface, the city continues to combat this entirely economic crisis with punitive law enforcement. Look at the sheer absurdity of the legal response. When an individual loses their home entirely because they ran out of cash to pay rent, the city's solution is to issue them a citation for $1,000. Arresting someone for resting on a sidewalk does absolutely nothing to restore their income. Real intervention, like securing long-term housing and providing mental health resources, proves far more economically efficient than cycling people through the justice system. The numbers back it up. For every 80 people successfully moved out of the tunnels and into stable housing and treatment, it saves local taxpayers an estimated $2.5 million annually. To actually solve the crisis, policy has to address the core math, the rapidly expanding, unsustainable gap between stagnant wages and soaring housing costs that forces people onto the streets. Punitive policing legislates an economic failure out of sight, temporarily hiding a structural crisis that the next flood will inevitably wash back to the surface.